I stepped into my home, feeling the excitement of Thanksgiving fill the air. I expected the laughter of family and the smell of a feast. Instead, I found silence. The house was empty. My heart sank. I walked further in, hoping to see familiar faces. All I found was Victor, my husband Brady's stepfather, sitting in a rocking chair. He looked frail and small. I felt a wave of confusion wash over me. I had not seen Victor much. He seemed distant, almost like a stranger. I walked closer. Victor looked up at me with tired eyes. He didn't smile. I could tell he was weak. I asked where everyone was. Victor pointed to a note on the table. I picked it up and read it. My hands shook as I read Brady's words. He had gone on a cruise with his ex, Hannah. I was to take care of Victor while they were away. My heart raced. How could he do this? Anger bubbled inside me. Brady knew I needed him. I had been looking forward to this holiday together. I felt betrayed. I looked at Victor. He seemed to understand my feelings. I sat down across from him. I didn't know you were here, I said. I thought I would see everyone. Victor shrugged. He didn't say much. His silence spoke volumes. I asked how he was feeling. He replied with a raspy voice, "Better than you." I was taken aback. His words were sharp, but they held a truth I didn't want to accept. I was feeling lost and alone. Victor's eyes held a glimmer of awareness. I noticed he was more alert than I expected. He began to speak about Brady's childhood. His stories were filled with humor and sarcasm. I listened closely. Each story revealed a different side of my husband I had never seen. Brady was not the perfect husband I thought he was. Victor painted a picture of a family filled with secrets and neglect. I realized that the family dynamic was complicated. As we talked, I felt a strange connection to Victor. I was drawn to his wit and sharpness. Despite his frail state, he had a strong presence. I began to see him as more than just Brady's stepfather. He was a person with his own story, his own pain. But the anger inside me simmered. I felt abandoned by my husband and his family. They had left me to care for someone who was not my responsibility. I took a deep breath. I needed to focus on Victor now. I stood up and moved to the kitchen. I wanted to prepare something simple for us. I opened the fridge and found only a few things. A sad turkey sat on the shelf, untouched. I sighed. This was not the Thanksgiving I had planned. I turned back to Victor. He watched me with a keen eye. "You're a good cook, aren't you?" he asked. I nodded, though my heart was not in it. "I'll make us something," I said. I felt a perfect image of my husband. It was hard to accept. "Brady never was the best son," Victor said, his voice lowering. "He always had a way of avoiding responsibility." I felt a pang of sadness. I had always believed in Brady. I thought he was a good man. Now I was unsure. As the evening wore on, I felt the exhaustion settle in. I helped Victor to his room. He needed help with his medication. I felt a new sense of responsibility. I was not just caring for my husband's stepfather. I was helping someone who had been neglected. I stayed with Victor for a while longer. I asked him about his health. He shared his struggles with me. I felt my heart soften. He was not just an old man, he had fears and hopes too. Later, as I settled into bed, my thoughts raced. I could not shake off the feeling of betrayal. Brady was out there, having fun with his ex. I wanted to scream. But then I thought of Victor. I realized I had a chance to make a difference. I could help him. I could be there for him in ways my husband had not been. I closed my eyes, trying to find some peace. I knew tomorrow would bring more challenges, but I was ready to face them. I had Victor by my side, and together we would navigate this unexpected journey. I woke up to the sound of soft creaking. It was Victor in the rocking chair again. The morning light filtered through the window. I stretched and felt the weight of yesterday's events pressing down on me. I got up and made my way to the kitchen. I wanted to prepare breakfast for both of us. I opened the fridge and found some eggs and bacon. I decided to whip up a simple meal. As I cooked, I thought about Victor. He had surprised me with his sharp mind. I wondered how much more he could share. I wanted to hear more about his life and Brady's childhood. I felt a mix of curiosity and concern. When breakfast was ready, I called out to Victor. "Breakfast is served." I felt a small thrill. This was the first meal I had prepared for him, and I hoped it would brighten his day. Victor shuffled in, looking more awake than before. He sat down at the table, and I placed the plate in front of him. "You didn't burn it," he said with a hint of a smile. I laughed. "Not yet, at least." We ate together, and I could see Victor enjoying the food. His eyes lit up with each bite. I felt a warmth in my chest. I enjoyed this moment of connection. "So, Victor, tell me more about Brady when he was a kid," I asked. I was eager to learn more about my husband's past. Victor leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful look on his face. "Brady was always the favorite," he began. "But he had a way of making people feel small." I frowned. This was not the Brady I knew. I had always seen him as kind and gentle. Victor continued. He would charm everyone, but he never took responsibility. I listened closely. I could feel the truth in Victor's words. He was revealing a side of Brady that I had never seen. Victor shared stories of Brady's antics. He talked about how he would sneak out at night and get into trouble. He was never punished, Victor said. His mother always let him off easy. I felt a mix of anger and sadness. I had trusted Brady. I had believed in the life we were building together. But now I saw cracks in that image. As we talked, I noticed Victor's sharp wit. It was refreshing. He had a way of making me laugh, even in this difficult time. I found comfort in our conversations. "Do you have any regrets?" I asked, curious about Victor's life. He paused, looking thoughtful. "I regret not standing up to my wife more. I let her control everything." His words struck a chord. I thought about my own situation. I was letting Brady control my emotions. I needed to take back my power. The more we talked, the more I felt a bond with Victor. He was not just my husband's stepfather. He was a person with his own struggles and wisdom. I began to see him as an ally. I helped him with his medications after breakfast. I noticed that he had a lot of pills to take. It made me realize how serious his health was. I felt a surge of protectiveness for him. "Thank you for helping me," Victor said softly. "Most people have forgotten about me." That hurt to hear. I couldn't believe that Brady and his family had left him to fend for himself. "You deserve better," I told him. "Better is hard to come by," he replied. "But you're here now." His words warmed my heart. I felt like I was making a difference. As the day went on, we shared more stories. Victor told me about his youth and the dreams he once had. I found myself captivated by his tales. He had lived a rich life despite the challenges. I realized that Victor had wisdom to share. He had seen the world in ways I had not. I wanted to learn from him. "Do you ever feel angry at your family?" I asked, wanting to understand him better. Victor sighed. "All the time. But anger eats away at you. I try to focus on what I can control." I nodded, understanding his point. I was filled with anger toward Brady, but I needed to focus on my own life now. As we continued to talk, I began to see how much Victor had been through. He had faced neglect and abandonment from those who should have cared. It mirrored my own feelings of betrayal. Our conversations became a source of strength for me. I felt less alone. Victor's stories encouraged me to rethink my situation. By the afternoon, I realized I was more determined than ever. I wanted to help Victor and stand by him. I wanted to change the narrative of our lives. Do you ever think about how to make things right? I asked Victor, feeling the weight of our shared experiences. He looked at me, eyes brightening. All the time. But it takes courage to change things. I felt a spark of inspiration. Together, we could face the challenges ahead. I knew that I could not change Brady, but I could stand up for Victor. As the day turned into night, I felt a sense of purpose. I no longer felt like a victim. I had a plan forming in my mind. I would help Victor find a way to expose the truth about Brady and his family. We would not be victims of their neglect. We would take control of our own stories. As I settled in for the night, I felt a strange mix of hope and determination. I was ready to fight for what was right. I was ready to stand by Victor and uncover the truth together. I woke up the next morning with a new sense of purpose. I thought about Victor and the stories he had shared. I wanted to learn more about his life and what he had faced. I felt like I was finally starting. You? I asked, trying to open the door to his experiences. Victor looked at me, his expression serious. It's a long story, but I will share it with you. He took a deep breath, and I could see he was preparing to relive some painful memories. He began to speak about his marriage to Brady's mother, Elaine. When we first got married, things were good, he said. But over time, it changed. I felt more like a servant than a partner. I listened carefully, feeling a wave of sympathy. It must have been hard for Victor to feel so neglected. He continued, Elaine was always focused on her career. She didn't have time for me or Brady. I could see the hurt in his eyes. Did Brady notice? I asked gently. Victor nodded. He did. But he learned to ignore it. He became good at pretending everything was fine. That struck a chord with me. I realized that Brady had learned to hide his feelings, just like Victor. What about after they grew up? I pressed. Victor sighed, looking weary. It got worse. I tried to connect with Brady, but he pushed me away. He only wanted to please his mother. I felt a mix of anger and sadness. How could Brady treat his stepfather this way? Did Elaine ever support you? I asked, wanting to understand the family dynamics better. No, she always took his side, Victor replied bitterly. I became invisible in my own home. I felt a surge of compassion for Victor. He had been living in a shadow for too long. That's not fair, I said firmly. You deserve to be treated with respect. He looked at me, a flicker of hope in his eyes. Thank you. It's nice to hear someone say that. As we continued to talk, Victor shared more stories of neglect and disappointment. He told me about the times he had tried to reach out to Brady and Elaine, only to be shut down. They never wanted to hear my side, he said. I felt my heart ache for him. It was clear that Victor had been through so much. I realized that I had been facing my own neglect from Brady. We were both victims in different ways, abandoned by those we cared about. Do you think they will ever change? I asked, curious about his perspective. Victor shook his head. People like them rarely change. They are set in their ways. His words hit me hard. I had hoped that Brady could see the truth and change his behavior. But now I began to doubt that. Do you have any hidden treasures? I asked, trying to lighten the mood. Something we could use to secure your future? Victor smiled slightly. I might. I've kept some things over the years. My interest piqued. What kind of things? He reached into a drawer and pulled out a small box. He opened it to reveal some old documents and photos. These are things I saved, just in case, he explained. They show what I've been through and what I've built. I looked through the contents. There were old bank statements, tax records, and even a few valuable items. It was a small treasure trove. This could help you, I said, feeling a surge of excitement. Victor nodded. But I'll need to be careful. If the family finds out, they might try to take it all away. I understood the risk. We were both in a vulnerable position. What if we create a plan? I suggested. We can document everything and protect what you have. Victor's eyes lit up. That's a good idea. We should gather evidence of their neglect and exploitation. As we brainstormed, I felt a sense of unity. Together, we could fight back against the family that had treated us poorly. We need to be smart about this, I said. We can't let them know our intentions. Victor agreed. We can start documenting everything. Our stories and their actions. I felt a surge of determination. We were no longer victims. We were allies, ready to take control of our lives. I began to feel a sense of hope I hadn't felt in a long time. Over the next few days, we worked together. We wrote down our experiences and collected evidence. Each story we shared brought us closer. I learned about the ways Brady had manipulated both of us. Victor's health continued to decline, and I felt a sense of urgency. We needed to act fast. I asked him if he could record a video testimony to document his experiences. It would be powerful, I said. He agreed, and we set up a camera. As he spoke, I could see the pain in his eyes. But there was also strength. He wanted the truth to be known. Brady has not only neglected me, but he has taken advantage of my situation, Victor said on camera. This needs to end. I felt a wave of pride wash over me. This was the start of our fight for justice. We were no longer just sitting and waiting. We were taking action. As we finished recording, I realized how far we had come. I had formed a bond with Victor, and together we were ready to confront the family that had hurt us. We were no longer alone. We had each other, and we had a plan. I felt a renewed sense of strength. I was determined to stand by Victor and bring the truth to light. I knew the road ahead would be tough, but we were ready to face it together. We would uncover the truth and seek the justice we both deserved. The morning sun poured through the window as I sat down with Victor. We had been working hard together, gathering our evidence and stories. I felt a sense of urgency as I thought about the next steps. I knew we needed to confront the family soon. Victor, I want to look into your finances more closely, I said. We need to ensure we have everything documented. He nodded, his expression serious. I agree. The family has always been secretive about money. I suspect there are things they don't want us to find. We started going through the box he had shown me. It was filled with old bank statements and documents. As we sifted through them, my heart raced. I felt like we were uncovering something important. As we looked at the papers, I noticed several statements with large withdrawals. Victor, do you recognize these? I asked, pointing to the numbers. He squinted at the paper. No, I don't. I never took out that much money. My heart sank. Someone in the family has been taking money from you. Victor looked troubled. That's what I feared. I thought they were just neglecting me, but this is worse. We continued to dig deeper. I found more transactions that didn't make sense. They were large sums taken out at odd times. They've been using your money while leaving you to struggle, I said, feeling anger rise within me. Victor's face hardened. This is theft. They think they can get away with it. I felt a wave of betrayal wash over me. Brady had always seemed so caring, but now I saw him differently. We have to confront them about this, I said firmly. Victor agreed. Yes, we need to show them we know what they've done. They won't expect us to fight back. I felt a surge of determination. We needed to create a plan that would expose the truth. I suggested we gather all the evidence we had collected. We can present it to the family when they return, I said. Victor nodded. Let's document everything. We can create a timeline of their neglect and financial exploitation. We spent hours working together, piecing everything together. I wrote down dates, amounts, and events. I could feel a sense of clarity forming. We were building a case against the family. After finishing our timeline, I felt a sense of accomplishment. I looked at Victor and said, "This is powerful. We have everything we need to confront them." He smiled faintly. I never thought I'd have someone by my side like this. It feels good. I knew we had formed a strong bond. Our shared experiences had brought us together in a way I hadn't expected. As the day went on, I noticed Victor growing tired. I worried about his health. Are you okay? I asked, my concern evident. I'll be fine, he replied, but his voice was weak. We need to finish this. I didn't want to push him too hard, but I understood his determination. Let's take a break and have some tea, I suggested. Victor agreed, and I prepared a pot of tea. As we sat together, I realized how much this journey had changed me. I was no longer just a victim. I was taking control of my life and standing up for someone who needed support. After our break, we resumed our work. We gathered the bank statements, our notes, and Victor's video testimony. I felt a sense of urgency building. We needed to be ready for the family's return. As we organized everything, I thought about how to present our findings. We should make it clear that we won't be silent anymore, I said. Victor nodded. We need to show them we are strong. We are not afraid. As we prepared, I felt a mix of fear and excitement. I was nervous about confronting Brady and the family, but I also felt empowered. We were taking a stand together. Victor's health continued to decline, but he remained focused. We have to do this soon, he said. I want them to know the truth before it's too late. I understood the urgency. I wanted to ensure Victor's voice was heard. We will make sure your story is told, I promised him. With each passing hour, the tension grew. I kept thinking about what would happen when the family returned. I knew they would be shocked at what we had uncovered. That evening, as I sat with Victor, I asked him about his feelings. Are you scared? He looked thoughtful. A little. But I feel more alive than I have in years. This is my chance to stand up for myself. His words inspired me. I realized that we were both fighting for our dignity. We were refusing to be victims any longer. As night fell, I reflected on everything we had accomplished together. I felt grateful for Victor's wisdom and strength. He had become more than just Brady's stepfather. He was my ally and friend. I could see our plan taking shape. We were ready for the family to return, and we would not back down. Together, we would confront them and demand justice. As I prepared for bed, I felt a strange mix of hope and determination. I knew that the next few days would change everything for both of us. We were ready to expose the truth and reclaim our lives. The days passed quickly as we prepared for the family's return. Victor and I spent every moment gathering our evidence and planning our next steps. I felt a growing sense of urgency. We needed to be ready. One afternoon, I turned to Victor. What if we create a narrative? We can document everything they did to you. He raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? We can write down your experiences, I explained. We can highlight the neglect, the financial exploitation, and the way they treated you. It can be our story to tell. Victor nodded slowly. That could work. If we present it well, it could have an impact. I felt a surge of excitement. Let's do it. We'll make it clear that we won't be silenced anymore. We began writing. I took notes while Victor shared his experiences. Each story revealed more of the truth. I could feel the weight of his pain in every word. As we crafted our narrative, I realized how powerful our voices could be. We were not just two people fighting back, we were telling a story that needed to be heard. We spent hours discussing the details. I asked Victor about specific incidents. Can you remember the last time they ignored you? He paused, his face hardening. It was last Christmas. I was sick, and they barely acknowledged me. They spent the day away, enjoying themselves. I wrote it down. That's a strong moment. We can use it to show how they neglected you. Victor nodded. Yes, we need to make it clear that this isn't just about money. It's about respect. As we continued, I felt a sense of camaraderie grow between us. We were allies in this fight. I was proud to stand by Victor's side. We also talked about making a video to complement our narrative. Your voice needs to be heard, I told him. We can capture your story on camera. Victor agreed. That could be powerful. We can show them my truth. We set up the camera and started recording. As Victor spoke, I could see the passion in his eyes. I've been ignored and neglected for too long, he said. This needs to change. I felt a swell of pride as he shared his story. Let's do this. We moved to the living room and waited. When Brady and his family walked in, their smiles faded quickly. They sensed the tension in the air. "What's going on?" Brady asked, his voice wary. I stepped forward. "We have something important to discuss." Victor added, "It's about how you've treated me and how you've taken advantage of my situation." Brady's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath and began to present our evidence. I laid out the timeline of neglect, the financial withdrawals, and Victor's experiences. As I spoke, I could see Brady's face change. Victor took over, sharing his video testimony. "This is my truth," he said firmly. "You can't ignore it." The room fell silent as they watched. I could see the shock on their faces. They were not prepared for this confrontation. As we concluded, I felt a wave of empowerment. We had done it. We had stood up for ourselves and shared our truth. Brady looked pale. "I didn't know," he stammered. Victor replied, "You never cared to find out. You chose to ignore me." The emotional fallout was palpable. The family began to argue among themselves, trying to defend their actions. I stood tall, feeling strong beside Victor. We had taken control of our story, and there was no turning back. As the chaos unfolded, I felt a sense of liberation. I knew we had made a significant impact. We were no longer victims. We were warriors fighting for our dignity and truth. The tension in the room was thick as we presented our evidence. Brady and his family looked shocked, their faces pale and expressions frozen. I could see the realization sinking in. They had underestimated us. "Why didn't you say anything before?" Brady finally asked, his voice shaky. Victor replied, "Because you never wanted to listen. You were too busy living your own life." I felt a surge of anger. Brady had left Victor alone while he enjoyed his vacation. "You can't just ignore someone when they need help," I said, my voice firm. As the conversation unfolded, I noticed people outside the window. Our neighbors were peering in, curious about the commotion. They had seen the neglect too. I felt a twinge of hope. Perhaps they would stand by us. Brady's sister, Lisa, stepped forward. "I can't believe you would do this to him," she said, her voice shaking. "You've been a part of this family too." I took a deep breath. That's exactly the point. Families should support one another, not take advantage. Victor nodded. "I've lived in this house for years, yet I've been treated like a burden. It's time to change that." The arguments continued, but I could see the cracks forming in their defenses. They were trying to protect themselves, but the truth was out. I felt empowered as I watched them stumble. Suddenly, one of our neighbors, Mrs. Johnson, stepped forward. "I've seen how Victor has been treated," she said, raising her voice. "This isn't just your family's issue. It's a community one." Her words filled the room with a new energy. More neighbors began to gather outside, listening intently. They had witnessed the neglect and were ready to support us. Brady's face turned red with anger. "Why are you here?" he shouted. Mrs. Johnson replied, "Because we care about Victor. We've seen the way you've ignored him. It's not right." I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. The support from our neighbors was a reminder that we were not alone in this fight. I turned to Victor and saw a flicker of hope in his eyes. "More people know the truth," I said, feeling a rush of empowerment. "This isn't just about you and your family anymore." Brady looked around, panic creeping into his eyes. "You're all turning against me?" he asked, desperation in his voice. I stepped closer to him. "You've hurt Victor, and now it's time to face the consequences." The room fell silent for a moment, tension hanging in the air. I could see the weight of the situation settling on Brady's shoulders. He was no longer the carefree husband I had known. He was facing the reality of what he had done. Victor spoke again, his voice steady. "I deserve respect and care. You can't ignore that anymore." Brady finally began to understand. I didn't realize," he stammered. "I thought you were fine." "It's not enough to assume," I said. "You should have asked, but you didn't." As the conversation continued, more neighbors arrived. They stood outside, watching and listening. Their presence offered a sense of solidarity that I hadn't expected. Lisa tried to defend her brother. "We didn't know how bad it was. We were busy with our own lives." Mrs. Johnson shook her head. "That's no excuse. You can't just ignore someone in need." As more voices joined in, I felt a wave of support. Our community was rallying around Victor. It was a powerful reminder that we were not alone in this fight. Brady's family began to argue among themselves. They were torn between defending Brady and realizing the truth about their neglect. I could see the conflict brewing in their eyes. "Listen," I said, trying to calm the situation. "We need to find a way to move forward. This can't just end in anger." Victor added, "I want to be part of the family, but it has to be different. I need respect and care." Brady looked around at his family and the neighbors. "I didn't mean for it to get this far," he said, his voice softer. I could see the struggle in his eyes. He was beginning to realize the impact of his actions. "It's not just about what you meant," I replied. "It's about what you did." As the discussion continued, I felt a sense of hope. We were making progress. Brady's family was starting to see the truth. They were beginning to understand the consequences of their neglect. Mrs. Johnson stepped forward again. "You have a chance to change, Brady. It starts now." Brady nodded slowly. "I want to change. I want to make things right." Victor looked at him, a mix of skepticism and hope in his eyes. "It won't be easy, but it's a start." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. This was the moment we had been waiting for. The truth was out, and we had the support to back it up. As the conversation continued, I watched Brady's family begin to rally around Victor. They started to apologize, acknowledging the pain they had caused. It was a slow process, but it was happening. I felt proud to stand beside Victor as we faced this challenge together. We had fought for the truth, and we were finally being heard. As the day went on, I realized that this was not just a confrontation, it was a turning point. We were building a new path forward, one based on respect and care. With the support of our neighbors and Victor's strength, we were ready to embrace a new beginning. We were no longer victims. Together, we were reclaiming our dignity and rewriting our story. The atmosphere in the room was tense, but there was a shift. Brady's family was beginning to grasp the depth of their neglect. I could see uncertainty in their faces as they processed the truth. Victor spoke up, his voice steady. "This isn't just about apologies. It's about changing how we treat each other moving forward." Brady nodded, his expression softening. "I want to do better. I truly didn't see how my actions affected you, Victor." I watched as the family started to take responsibility. It was a small victory, but it felt significant. Our neighbors stood by, providing encouragement as the conversation unfolded. Then I noticed Victor's face. He looked tired, and I worried about his health. "Are you okay?" I whispered, leaning in closer. He nodded, but I could see the strain in his eyes. "I'm fine. I just want to make sure they understand." I felt a pang of concern. He had been through so much, and I didn't want this confrontation to take a toll on him. "Let's take a break soon," I suggested. Victor agreed, but before we could step away, Lisa spoke up again. "What can we do to help?" I turned to her, surprised by her sincerity. "You can start by being there for Victor. He needs support, not just words." Brady added, "We can help with his care. We can visit him more often." I felt a flicker of hope. If they truly wanted to change, this could be the first step. "It starts with small actions," I said. "You need to show him that you care." As we continued to talk, I noticed that the neighbors were still listening intently. Their presence had created a sense of accountability. It reminded me that we were not alone in this fight. Brady's family began to share their own experiences. They talked about their busy lives and how they had failed to notice Victor's struggles. "We got caught up in our own problems," Lisa admitted. I understood that feeling. We all have our own battles, but it shouldn't come at the cost of ignoring those we care about. "It's important to stay connected," I said. "We can't let life get in the way." As the discussion continued, I felt the energy shift. There was a sense of understanding growing among us. It was no longer just about blame, it was about healing. Victor spoke again, his voice filled with emotion. "I want to feel like a part of this family again. But it takes effort from all of you." Brady nodded slowly. "We can do that. We can make changes." I saw determination in his eyes. It was a sign that he was ready to take responsibility for his actions. "It won't be easy," I warned. "But it's worth it." After a while, I suggested we take a break. "Let's step outside for a moment," I said, looking at Victor. He needed a breather. We moved to the porch, and I could feel the cool breeze on my skin. It was a welcome change from the tension inside. "How are you holding up?" I asked Victor. He sighed, looking out at the yard. "I'm tired, but I feel lighter." I could see the relief on his face. "You did an amazing job back there. You stood up for yourself." He smiled faintly. It felt good to finally be heard. As we stood in silence, I realized how far we had come. Just days ago, we were alone in our struggle. Now, we had support from the community and a chance to rebuild relationships. When we returned inside, the family was still discussing ways to change. They were brainstorming ideas for how to reconnect with Victor. It felt good to see them taking initiative. "Maybe we can have regular family dinners," Lisa suggested. "We can make a point to check in with you, Victor." "That sounds like a good start," I said, feeling hopeful. "But it has to be consistent." Brady spoke up again. "I'll make sure our family takes this seriously. I won't let you fall through the cracks again." Victor looked at him, a mix of skepticism and hope. "I appreciate that, but it's going to take time to rebuild trust." I could see the sincerity in Brady's eyes. "I understand. I'm willing to put in the effort." The neighbors outside began to clap, showing their support. It was a powerful moment. Everyone was rallying behind Victor, and the energy in the room shifted once more. As we wrapped up our discussion, I felt a sense of closure. We had confronted the family, shared our truth, and begun to create a path forward. Victor turned to me, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thank you for standing by me. I couldn't have done this alone." I smiled, feeling proud of what we had accomplished together. "You're not alone anymore. We're in this together." As the family began to leave, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. We had made progress, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the future. The neighbors lingered for a moment, offering their support. "We're here for you, Victor. Don't hesitate to reach out," Mrs. Johnson said warmly. I could see the sense of community build around us. It was comforting to know that we had allies who cared. As the sun began to set, I reflected on the day. It had been challenging, but it had also been a turning point. We were ready to embrace a new beginning, filled with promise and support. Victor and I stood together on the porch, watching the horizon. I could feel a sense of determination growing within me. We were ready to face whatever came next together. The days following our confrontation with Brady and his family were both hopeful and challenging. There was a sense of change in the air, but I knew it wouldn't come easy. Victor and I were determined to see this through. One morning, I sat down with Victor to finalize our legal documents. "It's important to have everything in place," I said, looking over the papers. "We need to protect you." Victor nodded, his brow furrowed. "I want to make sure they cannot take advantage of me again." We spent the morning going through the legal jargon, trying to make sense of it all. I had learned a bit about legal matters in the past, but this was new territory for both of us. "Let's call Patricia, your attorney," I suggested. "She can help us make sense of everything." Victor agreed, and I dialed her number. When she answered, I could hear the warmth in her voice. "Hello, how can I help you today?" I explained our situation and the changes we wanted to make. "We need to make sure Victor's rights are protected. We also want to document everything that has happened." "That's a good plan," Patricia said. "Let's set up a meeting to go over the details. I'll help you draft the necessary documents." After hanging up, I turned to Victor. "She's on board. We can get this done." Victor looked relieved. "I appreciate your support in all of this. It means a lot." As we prepared for the meeting, I could see Victor's health declining. He was growing weaker, and it worried me. "Are you feeling okay?" I asked, concerned. "I'm just tired," he replied, but I could see the strain in his eyes. "I want to get this done before." "Before what?" I didn't want to finish that sentence. I knew he was thinking about his health, and I wanted to believe he would be okay. The day of the meeting arrived, and I felt a mix of anxiety and determination. We drove to Patricia's office, discussing what we would say. "I want to be clear about the neglect I experienced," Victor said. "I need her to understand how serious this is." I nodded. "Yes, we will make sure she understands everything." When we arrived, Patricia greeted us warmly. "I'm glad to see you both. Let's get started." We sat down, and she began to review the documents. I've looked into the financial statements you provided, she said, looking serious. There is clear evidence of exploitation. Victor's face hardened. They took advantage of me while I was vulnerable. Patricia nodded. We will make sure this is documented properly. It's important for your future. As we continued, I felt a sense of purpose. We were taking control of our narrative and ensuring Victor's rights were protected. After the meeting, Patricia asked if we needed anything else. I recommend finding a way to keep a record of your interactions with the family, she said. Document everything. That's a good idea, I replied, feeling the weight of her words. We need to be proactive. Victor looked thoughtful. I've kept some notes over the years. I can dig them out. We left the office feeling empowered. Victor had a plan, and we were ready to take action. As we drove home, I could see the determination in Victor's eyes. I want to record a final message, he said suddenly. I want my family to understand my disappointment. I felt a mix of emotions. I knew this was important, but I was also worried about how it would affect him. Are you sure? I asked gently. He nodded. Yes. It's my truth, and it needs to be said. When we got home, I set up the camera again. Victor took a deep breath, and I could see the weight of the moment on him. Whenever you're ready, I said, hitting the record button. Victor began to speak, his voice steady but filled with emotion. To my family, I want you to know how deeply your neglect has hurt me. I've spent years feeling invisible. I could see the strength in him as he continued. I want you to understand the pain of being ignored. It's not just about the money. It's about love and support. As he spoke, I felt a wave of pride. This was his moment to share his truth. I hope you can change. I hope you will choose to be better. When he finished, I stopped the recording. That was powerful, I said, feeling moved. Victor looked relieved. I needed to say that. It's a part of my journey. We saved the video and prepared to share it with the family when the time was right. I felt a sense of unity between us. We were standing up for our own truths and protecting each other. As the days went by, I noticed Victor's health declining further. I worried about him constantly. We need to make sure you're taking care of yourself, I said one morning. I'm doing my best, he replied, but I could see the fatigue in his eyes. I just want to finish this. I knew how important it was for him to see this through. We will. I promise. The support from our neighbors continued to grow. They checked in on Victor regularly, offering help and companionship. It warmed my heart to see the community come together. One evening, we gathered in the living room with a few neighbors. They wanted to hear about our progress and how they could help. We're here for you, Victor, Mrs. Johnson said. You're not alone in this. Victor smiled, gratitude shining in his eyes. Thank you. It means a lot to know that I have support. As we shared our plans, I felt a renewed sense of strength. We were creating a network of support, and it was powerful. That night, as I prepared for bed, I reflected on how far we had come. I felt proud of Victor for his courage and determination. We were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead together. With the legal documents in place and the support of our community, we were ready to take the next step. Victor's voice would be heard, and together we would ensure that his story was told. The day finally arrived when Brady and his family were scheduled to return. I felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. This was the moment we had been preparing for, and I wanted to make sure everything went smoothly. Victor and I spent the morning going over our materials one last time. Are you ready? I asked, trying to gauge his feelings. He took a deep breath. I am ready. I want them to understand the impact of their actions. I admired his strength. Good. We have the evidence, and we're going to make sure they hear us. As the hours passed, I felt time slowing down. Every tick of the clock made my heart race. I wanted to be strong for Victor, but I was nervous. When I heard the sound of a car pulling up, my stomach dropped. They're here, I said, looking at Victor. He nodded, his expression serious. Let's do this. We stood together in the living room, the materials spread out on the table. I glanced out the window and saw Brady and his family stepping out of the car. They looked relaxed and carefree, completely unaware of what was about to unfold. As they entered the house, I could see the confusion on their faces. What's going on? Brady asked, his brow furrowing. I stepped forward, my voice steady. We have something important to discuss. Victor moved closer, his presence strong beside me. It's about how you've treated me and how your actions have affected my life. Brady looked taken aback. What do you mean? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. We've gathered evidence of your neglect and exploitation. We want you to understand the impact of your actions. The room fell silent as I placed the documents on the table. I could see the shock in their eyes as they realized the seriousness of the situation. Victor spoke again. I've felt invisible in this family for too long. You've ignored my needs and taken advantage of my situation. Brady's face turned pale. I didn't know, he stammered. I could see the panic rising in him. It's not enough to say you didn't know. You should have cared enough to ask. Victor added, we've spent years feeling neglected. This isn't just about me. It's about how you treat family. As we continued to present our evidence, I could feel the tension in the room. Brady's family began to argue among themselves, confusion and guilt etched on their faces. I didn't know things were this bad, Brady's sister, Lisa, said, her voice shaky. We were all caught up in our own lives. That's no excuse, I replied firmly. Ignoring someone in need is a choice. Brady looked around, desperation in his eyes. What can I do to change this? I felt a flicker of hope. It starts with understanding. You need to listen to Victor and make an effort to be there for him. Victor nodded. I want to be part of this family, but it has to be different. I need respect and care. As we continued the discussion, Victor's health seemed to weigh heavily on his mind. I could see the exhaustion in his eyes, and it worried me. Are you okay? I whispered, leaning closer to him. He nodded but looked tired. I'm fine. I just want them to understand. I wanted to ensure this confrontation wouldn't take too much out of him. Let's take a break if you need it. But Victor shook his head. No, I need to do this. The discussion grew heated as Brady's family began to defend themselves. We didn't mean to neglect you, Lisa said, her voice rising. We just didn't see it. That's the problem, I said. You need to open your eyes and see what's happening around you. Brady looked thoughtful, his expression shifting. I'll do better. I promise I will try. I felt a wave of emotion wash over me. It's not just about promises. It's about actions. You need to show Victor that you care. As the conversation continued, I noticed our neighbors watching from outside. Their support was palpable, and I felt reinforced by their presence. They had witnessed the neglect, and now they were standing by us as we confronted the family. Brady seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. What can we do to make this right? He asked, his voice softer now. Victor replied, start by being present in my life. Reach out to me. Make an effort. I could see Brady absorbing Victor's words. I want to make things better. I'll commit to checking in regularly. I felt a flicker of hope. It was a small step, but it was a step in the right direction. That's a good start, I said, feeling encouraged. As the family began to process everything, I could see them questioning their own actions. They were starting to realize the impact of their neglect on Victor's life. Mrs. Johnson, one of our neighbors, stepped forward. You have a chance to change, Brady. Don't waste it. The room fell silent again. I could see the weight of her words settling in. Brady looked at his family, and I could see uncertainty in his eyes. Victor spoke again, his voice steady. This can be a turning point. You can choose to be better. As the conversation began to wind down, I felt a sense of relief. We had stood up for ourselves and shared our truths. Brady looked at Victor, sincerity in his eyes. I'm sorry for what I put you through. I didn't understand until now. Victor nodded, acceptance in his expression. Thank you. I hope this is the beginning of a new chapter. As the family began to leave, I felt a mix of emotions. It had been a difficult confrontation, but it had also been cathartic. he asked, sounding genuine. I'm doing well. I just wanted to see how things were going on your end, I said, trying to keep the tone light. We've been talking a lot as a family, he replied. We're trying to figure out how to be better. I felt a glimmer of hope. That's a good start. It's important to keep the conversation going. Brady agreed. I want to make things right with Victor. I realize now how much I've taken for granted. Actions speak louder than words, I reminded him. Make sure you show him you care. After our conversation, I felt a mix of emotions. I wanted to believe that he was sincere, but I also knew that it would take time to rebuild trust. Later that week, I noticed Victor growing more tired. I wanted to make sure he was comfortable, so I suggested we plan a small gathering with our neighbors. It might lift your spirits, I said. Victor smiled, but there was a hint of worry in his eyes. I don't want to be a burden. You're not a burden, I insisted. You deserve to be surrounded by people who care about you. He nodded, and we began planning the gathering. I felt a sense of excitement as we invited our neighbors. It would be a chance for Victor to feel connected again. On the day of the gathering, the house filled with laughter and warmth. Neighbors brought food and drinks, and the atmosphere was bright. Victor smiled as he interacted with everyone. I could see the joy in his eyes, and it made my heart swell. As the evening unfolded, I noticed Brady and his family arriving. I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me, but I reminded myself that this was about healing. When they entered, Brady looked around, taking in the scene. Wow, this is great, he said, genuinely amazed. I could see Victor's expression shift as he spotted them. Hello, he said quietly, but I could sense he was nervous. Brady approached him. I'm glad to see you here, Victor. I hope you're doing okay. Victor gave a small nod. I'm managing. The gathering continued, and I watched as Brady made an effort to engage with Victor. He asked questions and listened, showing that he wanted to connect. As the night went on, I felt a sense of hope for their relationship. Maybe they could find a way to rebuild their bond. Later, as the gathering began to wind down, I found myself standing beside Victor on the porch. He looked out at the night sky, a thoughtful expression on his face. Thank you for doing this, he said, turning to me. It's nice to feel connected again. I smiled, feeling proud of what we had accomplished. You deserve to feel loved and supported. Victor looked at me, gratitude shining in his eyes. I couldn't have done this without you. You've helped me find my voice. I felt a rush of emotion. We did this together. You're strong, and I'm honored to stand by your side. As we shared that moment, I realized how far we had come. We had faced our challenges and turned them into opportunities for growth. As I looked at the gathering, I felt a sense of closure. We had confronted the past, and now we were ready to embrace a brighter future. With the support of our community and the willingness of Brady's family to change, I knew we could move forward together. Victor's memory would live on in the strength we had discovered as allies. Together, we would honor that legacy, and I was determined to ensure that Victor's voice would always be heard. If you loved the story, like the video and subscribe.